Emily Carter stood at the edge of the overgrown driveway, her hand resting on her swollen belly, 8 months pregnant and exhausted. The wind whispered through the skeletal remains of what once had been a modest house on the outskirts of town. Blackened beams jutted out at odd angles, and the burnt scent still lingered in the air. The fire had long since died down, but the ruin remained, a testament to destruction and loss. Yet to Emily, this scarred shell represented a fragile hope, a chance to rebuild not just a home, but a life for her unborn child. Just days earlier, she had made the impulsive decision to purchase the fire-damaged property, despite the warnings from friends and the doubts clouding her mind. The house was all she could afford, bought with the last of her savings after losing her job and facing mounting debts. The charred remains were a stark mirror of her own situation, broken, battered, and uncertain. But deep inside, Emily clung to the belief that this ruin could be the foundation of a fresh start. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. 2 weeks before, Emily had sat in a cramped, sterile office, clutching a pink slip that ended her employment abruptly. The company had downsized without warning, and her 12 years of dedication meant nothing in the face of corporate cuts. The termination letter was cold, offering no safety net, no severance to soften the blow. As she stared at the stark words, the weight of failure pressed down on her chest. How would she provide for her unborn baby? How could she face another eviction notice when her landlord had given her just a month to vacate their tiny apartment? The apartment itself was a cage. Stale air, peeling wallpaper, and the echo of loneliness. With no family nearby and few friends who understood her desperation, Emily felt the walls closing in. Rent overdue, bills piled high, and the ticking clock of her due date looming nearer by the day. Every knock on the door, every letter slipped under the threshold, threatened to unravel her fragile grip on stability. On a damp, gray morning, with the car packed to the brim, Emily had driven out to the edge of town, where the burned house waited like a ghost. The realtor's words still echoed in her mind. It's a fixer-upper, but the price is right. And with some work, it could be a home again. There was no choice but to believe in those words, to cling to the possibility that from ash and ruin, something new could grow. As she stepped cautiously over the rubble, the soil soft beneath her boots, Emily's fingers brushed against the warped front door. It hung crooked on its hinges, a warped skeleton of wood and metal. The silence inside was thick, broken only by the creak of the floor beneath her weight. Dust floated in the shafts of weak sunlight, filtering through the broken windows, settling on scattered debris and the remnants of a life abruptly interrupted. She moved slowly through the charred remains of what had once been a living room. The wallpaper was scorched and peeling, the furniture reduced to blackened frames. A shattered mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting a distorted image of her own tired face. The sight was jarring. This place, like her, bore the scars of loss and uncertainty. But unlike the mirror, the house held secrets, a story waiting to be uncovered. Despite the overwhelming damage, Emily found herself imagining the space filled with warmth and light. A cradle near the window, soft blankets, and the gentle hum of lullabies. She pictured her child taking first steps across the creaking floorboards, laughter echoing where silence now reigned. The vision was fragile but fierce, a beacon in the darkness of her current struggle. Her neighbors, sparse and distant, had warned her against the purchase. "That place is cursed," one had muttered, shaking his head as he passed by. Another had questioned her sanity, asking how a pregnant woman could consider living in a ruin with no heat, no water, no electricity. But Emily felt an odd kinship with the house's battered bones. Like her, it had been through fire and destruction, yet both remained standing, broken but not defeated. Settling into the nearby town's modest motel for the night, Emily lay awake, the weight of her decision pressing on her mind. The hum of the city, distant and indifferent, reminded her of all she was about to face. The pregnancy made every simple task exhausting, and the uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. Yet beneath the fatigue, a spark of determination burned bright. This was her last chance to claim a future. The following morning, armed with gloves and a borrowed flashlight, Emily returned to the property. The morning sun struggled to warm the cold air, but she felt a flicker of hope as she stepped through the broken doorway once more. She began clearing debris, moving charred boards, and twisted metal aside, careful not to disturb the fragile structure more than necessary. Each piece removed revealed glimpses of the house's former life. An old photograph here, a scorched book there, reminders that life had existed within these walls. Her body protested, every movement a reminder of her condition, yet Emily pushed on. The physical labor was grueling, but it grounded her, gave her a purpose beyond fear. She allowed herself small victories: a cleared patch of floor, a stable chair uncovered beneath ash, a window unblocked to let in fresh air. Though the house was far from livable, these moments were milestones on the path to reclaiming a home. That afternoon, Emily visited the local hardware store, where the clerk eyed her with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. She purchased the bare essentials: paint, nails, a hammer, and accepted advice on where to find affordable labor if needed. The trip was draining, but it marked the first step toward rebuilding not just the house, but her shattered confidence. Back at the property, Emily paused at the edge of the backyard, where the charred remnants of a swing set stood twisted against the sky. She pictured a future where her child could play freely here, far from the cramped apartments and uncertain streets. The thought fueled her resolve, turning exhaustion into determination. She was not just fighting for shelter. She was fighting for a sanctuary, a place where life could begin anew. Night fell swiftly, and Emily retreated to the motel once again, her body aching but her spirit unbroken. She wrapped her hands around a warm cup of tea, staring out the window at the stars above the quiet town. Each star seemed to whisper promises of hope and renewal, an unspoken encouragement that she clung to fiercely. As sleep finally claimed her, Emily dreamed of the house restored, walls painted in soft pastels, curtains fluttering in the breeze, the laughter of a child filling every corner. The ruin outside seemed a distant memory, replaced by a vision of possibility and love. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities. In the depths of her heart, Emily made a silent vow. No matter how difficult the road ahead, she would not let this house, or her baby, be defined by fire and loss. From the ashes, she would build a home, a life, and a future that no one could take away. The following days slipped by in a blur of sweat, dust, and aching muscles. Emily Carter found herself locked in a battle against time, exhaustion, and the very walls of the burned house she had claimed as her own. Each morning, she rose before dawn, her swollen belly a constant reminder of the life she was nurturing, even as she struggled to rebuild a life for them both. The house, though still a ruin, began to feel less like a lost cause and more like a canvas for her determination. Emily had no experience in repairs or construction. Her hands were accustomed to typing on a keyboard, not wielding a hammer or scraping away charred plaster. Yet, armed with a borrowed tool set and a heart full of resolve, She set to work. The first challenge was the absence of basic utilities. The house had no electricity, no running water, and the foundation was unstable in places. She had spent nearly all her savings on purchasing the property, leaving little for the necessary repairs. Each small expense, nails, paint, a coil of wire, felt like a gamble. Would this investment pay off? Or was she sinking further into despair? Neighbors watched her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. From behind curtains and porch railings, whispers floated through the air. Why would a pregnant woman take on such a mess? One elderly man muttered to his wife. She doesn't know what she's in for. The doubt stung more than she expected, but Emily refused to let it shake her resolve. The physical labor was grueling. Emily's body protested with every movement. The sharp pangs in her back, the swelling in her ankles, the breathlessness that came from even modest exertion. At times, she had to pause, leaning against a charred beam or sitting on a fallen stump to catch her breath. Yet, she pushed forward, each small step a victory. One afternoon, she found herself sitting amidst piles of rubble, staring at a broken window frame. The wind whispered through the empty panes, chilling her despite the late summer sun. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, not just from exhaustion, but from the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. How long could she keep this up alone? Would this house ever truly feel like home? And most pressing of all, how would she protect her baby in such a fragile shelter? Her nights were restless, filled with dreams of falling walls and looming eviction notices. The motel room she rented nearby was cramped and cold, a poor substitute for the sanctuary she longed to create. Yet, each time she returned to the property, she discovered small signs of progress. A window secured with salvaged wood, a patch of floor cleared of debris, a corner swept clean enough to imagine placing a crib. Despite the isolation, Emily began to find moments of unexpected joy. She found a faded flower pot in the backyard and decided to plant a few seeds she had kept from her mother's garden. The simple act of nurturing life in the scorched earth felt symbolic, a promise that new growth was possible even here. She spoke softly to the soil, imagining the blooms that might one day brighten the bleak yard. Her routine settled into a rhythm. Mornings spent clearing debris and patching the roof where rain had leaked through. Afternoons visiting the hardware store for supplies and advice. Evenings spent poring over online tutorials on home repair, her laptop balanced precariously on her lap. She reached out cautiously to the local community, hoping to find someone who might lend a hand or offer guidance. That's when she met Jack, a burly mechanic who ran the garage down the road. Their first encounter was unplanned. Emily's car sputtered and stalled while driving back from the store. Jack had noticed her struggling and offered to take a look. With grease-streaked hands and a kind smile, he got the engine running again and refused to accept payment. Over the next few days, Jack became a steady presence. He offered practical advice on repairs and helped secure some temporary wiring to bring a flicker of light into the darkest corners of the house. His easy confidence and genuine kindness were a balm to Emily's frayed nerves. For the first time in weeks, she felt less alone. Still, the challenges mounted. The structural damage was worse than she had anticipated. Some of the floor joists were rotted through, making parts of the house unsafe to walk on. The roof leaked in multiple spots, and the insulation was long gone. Every fix uncovered new problems, each more daunting than the last. The money she had left dwindled faster than she liked, and the looming arrival of her baby added pressure to find a secure place quickly. Emily's evenings often found her sitting on the porch steps, rubbing her swollen feet and watching the sun sink behind the trees. She allowed herself moments of doubt, but refused to succumb to despair. She reminded herself that this house, like her, was battered, but not broken. Every nail she hammered, every board she replaced, was a step toward reclaiming her future. One particularly difficult day, the heat was oppressive, and her energy near spent. While trying to clear debris from a collapsed section of the porch, she felt a sharp cramp in her abdomen. Fear gripped her, and she sat down heavily, breathing deeply to calm the pain. It was a stark reminder of her limits, of the fragile life she carried. That night, she resolved to slow down, to listen more closely to her body's warnings. Despite the physical toll, Emily's spirit remained unyielding. She began to document her progress in a worn notebook, jotting down measurements, supply lists, and small victories. Each entry was a testament to her perseverance, a chronicle of hope amid hardship. Her interactions with neighbors gradually shifted. Some who had once doubted her now offered small gestures of support, a plate of food left at the edge of her property, a wave of encouragement from a passing car. The skepticism softened into cautious respect. Emily found herself not just fighting for a house, but slowly becoming part of a community. Yet, the house itself remained a constant challenge. Without professional help, her progress was slow, and the lack of utilities made even basic tasks complicated. She cooked simple meals on a small camping stove, washed in a basin using water hauled from the nearby well, and slept on a makeshift bed in a corner, cleared just enough to lie down. The comforts she once took for granted were absent, but the hope of building something lasting sustained her. With her due date approaching, the urgency grew. Emily knew she needed to create a safe space for her baby soon. Each day, she balanced the physical demands of renovating the house with the emotional weight of impending motherhood. The vulnerability she felt was sharpened by the isolation, but also softened by the small connections she was forging. In quiet moments, she imagined the future. A nursery painted in soft hues, toys scattered across the floor, lullabies sung under the gentle glow of a restored lamp. These visions carried her through the toughest days, reminding her that beneath the rubble lay the foundation of something beautiful. Though the path was steep and uncertain, Emily's determination never wavered. The burned house, once a symbol of loss and despair, was slowly becoming a beacon of resilience and hope. Every scraped knee, every blistered hand, every aching muscle was a step toward reclaiming her life, her dignity, and the promise of a new beginning. The morning sun cast long shadows over the burnt remains of Emily Carter's house as she approached the back porch, determination steady in her every step. The previous weeks had been a relentless cycle of labor and exhaustion, but today, something new stirred beneath the layers of ash and ruin, a discovery that would shift the course of her fragile hope. While clearing debris near the kitchen area, Emily's gloved hand brushed against an uneven surface beneath a pile of collapsed floorboards. Curious, despite the weariness that tugged at her limbs, she knelt and began to carefully remove the rubble, revealing a rusted metal hatch barely visible under soot and dust. The hatch was heavy and locked, its surface scarred and blackened by fire, but remarkably intact. Her heart quickened at the sight. It was a hidden basement entrance, something she hadn't expected in the modest house. The fire had clearly damaged the access, leaving it almost inaccessible. But now it lay before her, a secret waiting to be unveiled. The possibilities raced through her mind. What had been hidden down there? Was it a storage cellar, a root cellar, or something more? Emily set to work searching for a way to open the hatch. The lock was seized tight by rust and grime, and her fingers were too clumsy and tired to manipulate it alone. She remembered Jack, the mechanic who had helped her with the car and some wiring, and decided to call him for assistance. Within the hour, Jack arrived, toolbox in hand, his face lighting up with interest at the sight of the hidden door. Using a crowbar and some oil, Jack worked patiently, his strong hands prying and coaxing the lock free of decades of corrosion. The creak of the hatch's hinges echoed in the still morning air as it swung open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Emily shone her flashlight down the steps, illuminating the damp, soot-streaked walls below. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Emily descended first, Jack close behind. The air was cool and musty, heavy with the scent of earth and forgotten years. At the bottom, the basement opened into a small, cluttered room, filled with remnants of a life abruptly interrupted. Broken furniture, a toppled chair, and scattered papers lay beneath a thick layer of dust and ash. Among the debris, a locked metal box caught Emily's eye. It was covered in soot, but oddly well preserved, its surface etched with intricate designs and patterns. The lock was sturdy, but unlike the hatch, it seemed less corroded, hinting that it might still be opened. Emily's fingers trembled as she brushed away the soot, her mind racing with questions. What secrets could this box hold? Jack offered to help, but Emily insisted on trying first. She remembered a small ornate key she had found days before, buried beneath the rubble near the porch, a key whose purpose had eluded her until now. With a hopeful breath, she slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, and with a soft click, the box creaked open. Inside lay a collection of old letters, photographs, and a faded, leather-bound diary. The fragile pages were yellowed with age, some edges singed, but still legible. Emily carefully lifted the diary, its cover embossed with the name Margaret Harper. Her fingers traced the faded ink as she opened to the first page, her curiosity deepening with every word. The diary told the story of Margaret, a single mother who had once called this house home. Her entries painted a vivid picture of daily struggles and quiet joys. Raising a child alone, tending a small garden, and dreaming of a better future despite the hardships. But beneath the tender memories lay hints of something darker: disputes over land ownership, threats from neighbors, and a growing sense of unease. Emily's eyes scanned a passage describing a mysterious fire that had devastated the house years before, an event shrouded in suspicion. Margaret wrote of strange visitors, whispered threats, and the fear that her home was being targeted by powerful interests seeking to claim the land. The diary ended abruptly, leaving the reader with a sense of unfinished business and unresolved danger. As Emily absorbed the words, she felt a profound connection to Margaret's story. The parallels between their lives were striking. Both women grappling with loss, fighting for stability, and striving to protect their families against overwhelming odds. The discovery was more than a curiosity. It was a link to the past, a beacon illuminating the path ahead. Jack leaned against the wall, watching Emily with quiet respect. "Looks like this place has more history than we thought," he said softly. "And maybe more fight left in it, too." Emily nodded, clutching the diary to her chest. The house was no longer just a burned ruin. It was a repository of stories, a testament to resilience and courage. She resolved to uncover the full truth, to honor Margaret's memory by restoring not just the house, but the legacy it held. Back upstairs, as sunlight streamed through broken windows, Emily spread the letters and photographs across a cleared table. Each photo depicted moments frozen in time, Margaret smiling alongside a young child, the house before the fire standing proud amidst blooming flowers, neighbors gathered in celebration. The images breathed life into the forgotten past, weaving a tapestry of community and loss. Among the letters was correspondence hinting at a property dispute involving a powerful developer, a name Emily recognized from local gossip, a man known for aggressive land acquisitions and little regard for the displaced. The letters revealed Margaret's attempts to fight back, appealing to local authorities and seeking legal counsel. But the outcome was uncertain. Emily's mind raced with the implications. If the fire had been set intentionally to force Margaret out, could the same forces still be at work? Was her own claim to the house at risk? The weight of the discovery settled heavily on her shoulders, but it also steeled her resolve. That evening, back at the motel, Emily pored over the diary and letters by the dim light of a bedside lamp. She made notes, cross-referencing names and dates, piecing together a narrative that stretched beyond her own struggles. The past and present intertwined, revealing a story of injustice, resilience, and the fight for home. Despite the growing sense of unease, Emily felt a renewed strength. The discovery of Margaret's story was a gift, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. The secrets hidden beneath the house were not just relics. They were keys to understanding the challenges ahead and finding a way to overcome them. As she closed the diary and prepared for sleep, Emily whispered a silent promise to Margaret and to herself. She would uncover the truth, protect the home they both cherished, and ensure that the legacy of courage endured. From the ashes of destruction, a new story was beginning. One of hope, determination, and the unbreakable bond between past and future. The morning light filtered softly through the tattered curtains of Emily's motel room as she sat cross-legged on the bed, Margaret Harper's diary resting open on her lap. The pages, worn and fragile, had become a lifeline, each word a thread connecting Emily to the woman who had once called the burned house home. The story unfolding within those pages was more than a personal history. It was a mirror reflecting Emily's own struggles and a key to unlocking the secrets that haunted the house. Determined to deepen her understanding, Emily ventured into town, clutching the diary and the faded photographs she had carefully gathered from the basement. The streets, lined with modest shops and weathered homes, whispered of a community shaped by time and hardship. She moved cautiously, aware of the curious glances from passers-by, but driven by a need to learn more about Margaret and the neighborhood's past. Her first stop was the local library, a modest building with creaky wooden floors and shelves heavy with dust-covered volumes. The librarian, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Whitaker, greeted Emily warmly, sensing the earnestness in her eyes. Emily explained her discovery and asked if there were any records or local histories that might shed light on Margaret Harper and the fire that had devastated the house years before. Mrs. Whitaker led her to a small archive of newspaper clippings and town records. Together, they sifted through yellowed pages, the headlines telling stories of the community's triumphs and tragedies. Among the clippings, Emily found a brief article about the fire that had consumed the Harper house, noting the suspicion surrounding its cause, but offering little detail. Another piece mentioned a legal dispute over property, boundaries involving the Harper family, and a prominent developer named Clayton Monroe. The name struck a chord. Clayton Monroe was known locally for his aggressive acquisition tactics, often pushing small homeowners out to make way for sprawling developments. The article hinted at tension and conflict, but stopped short of naming culprits or outcomes. Emily's heart sank as the fragments of the past began to align with the threats Margaret had written about in her diary. Leaving the library, Emily wandered toward the town square, where an old coffee shop sat nestled between a hardware store and a florist. Inside, the air smelled of freshly ground beans and worn leather, and a few patrons chatted quietly over steaming mugs. She approached the counter where a middle-aged man polished glasses, his eyes catching hers with a flicker of recognition. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice warm. "I'm looking for information about Margaret Harper," Emily said hesitantly. She used to live in the house outside town, the one that burned down years ago. The man paused, then nodded slowly. "I remember Margaret. She was a strong woman, raised her boy on her own after her husband passed. The fire, well, folks around here never believed it was an accident. There were rumors that Monroe had his hand in it, trying to scare her off the land." Emily's pulse quickened. Did people try to help her? Did anyone stand with her? He sighed. Some did, but Monroe had power and money. He owned half the town by then. Margaret fought hard, but eventually lost the battle. The property went to Monroe not long after the fire. It was a sad time. Encouraged by the man's candor, Emily pressed on, asking about neighbors who might remember Margaret personally. The barista mentioned a few names and suggested a woman named Helen, who lived a few blocks away and had known Margaret well. With a map scrawled on a napkin, Emily made her way to Helen's house, a quaint cottage with a flower garden still blooming despite the late summer. Helen, a silver-haired woman with bright eyes and a gentle smile, welcomed Emily inside without hesitation. The warmth of the home contrasted sharply with the cold uncertainty Emily had felt since arriving. Over cups of tea, Helen recounted vivid memories of Margaret Harper, her kindness, her resilience, and the quiet dignity with which she faced hardship. She was a fighter, Helen said softly. Never gave up on that land, even when it was clear the odds were against her. Helen spoke of the night of the fire, the shock that rippled through the neighborhood, and the whispered suspicions that Monroe's men had started it. Margaret tried everything, petitioned the town council, reached out to lawyers, but the weight of Monroe's influence was too heavy. We all felt powerless. Emily listened intently, the pieces of the past weaving together into a tapestry of injustice and courage. Helen's stories gave life to the diary's words, transforming Margaret from a name on a page to a woman who had walked the same streets, fought the same battles. Before leaving, Helen pressed a folded envelope into Emily's hands. "Margaret left this with me before she passed. I think she wanted someone to have it when the time was right. Maybe it can help you." Back at the motel, Emily carefully opened the envelope. Inside were letters, more photographs, and a map marked with notes and symbols. The map outlined the neighborhood, highlighting properties and boundaries that suggested a hidden layer to the land dispute. The letters contained pleas for help, correspondence with local officials, and references to evidence that could expose Monroe's illegal dealings. Emily's fingers trembled as she absorbed the contents. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. This was no longer just about rebuilding a house. It was about uncovering the truth and fighting for justice, not only for Margaret, but for herself and the community that had suffered under Monroe's shadow. In the days that followed, Emily began reaching out to others in the town, sharing Margaret's story and the evidence she had found. Some were hesitant, wary of stirring up old conflicts, but others responded with quiet support. The community, fractured by years of fear and silence, started to find its voice again. Jack remained a steadfast ally, offering practical help and unwavering encouragement. Together, they discussed plans to repair the house and navigate the legal obstacles that might lie ahead. Emily's bond with the town grew stronger, fueled by shared memories and a collective desire to right past wrongs. As the sun set over the quiet streets, Emily sat on the porch of the burned house, the diary and letters spread before her. The journey ahead was daunting, filled with uncertainty and risk. But she no longer felt alone. Margaret's legacy had become a rallying cry, and the community's stories intertwined with her own determination. In that moment, the burned house stood not just as a symbol of loss, but as a beacon of hope, a place where past and present converged, and where the fight for home and justice had only just begun. Days after uncovering Margaret Harper's letters and map, Emily Carter felt the air around her shift, thick with tension and silent warnings. The neighborhood that had once offered quiet curiosity was now pulsing with unease. Whispers followed her steps. Shadows seemed to linger where before there'd been light, and the weight of unseen eyes pressed heavily on her back. She first noticed the change on a morning when, arriving at the burned house, she found fresh tire tracks pressed deep into the muddy driveway. The marks were unfamiliar, too large for the few residents nearby. Her heart quickened as she scanned the perimeter, but there was no one to confront, only the lingering echo of a threat unspoken. Emily's fingers tightened around the edges of Margaret's diary as she stepped inside the charred shell. The house offered no protection from the storm gathering outside, both literal and metaphorical. The creaking floorboards groaned under her weight, the absence of walls and windows leaving her vulnerable to the world and to those who sought to intimidate her. She had begun piecing together the truth of the fire, suspecting it was no accident, but a calculated act tied to a powerful developer's greed. Clayton Monroe's name echoed in her mind, a shadow looming over the neighborhood like a dark cloud. The letters hinted at his illegal attempts to seize land, and now, it seemed, he was aware of her investigation. That evening, as Emily returned to the motel after a day of sorting through documents and making calls, she found a note slipped under her door. The paper was blank, but the message was clear. Someone was watching, warning her to stop digging. The silence of the empty note screamed louder than words. Fear wrapped around her like a thick fog, but beneath it was a steely resolve. Emily refused to be driven away. This house, this fight, was not hers alone. It was the legacy of Margaret and the countless others crushed beneath the weight of corruption. She owed it to them, and to her unborn child, to see it through. The following days brought subtle yet unsettling encounters. A dark car idled too long by the roadside as she worked outside. Voices hushed abruptly when she passed by. A broken window, deliberately shattered, startled her one morning, sending shards of glass sparkling across the soot-stained floor. Each act was a gauntlet thrown at her feet, daring her to retreat. But Emily stood firm, drawing strength from the community that had begun to rally quietly around her. Helen had offered words of comfort and an old family photograph that showed Margaret standing defiantly outside her house, a reminder of the resilience that had come before. Jack, too, had become a steadfast protector, his presence a shield against the growing threats. Despite the mounting danger, Emily pushed forward with repairs, determined to create a safe haven before the baby's arrival. The physical labor was exhausting, yet it grounded her, giving purpose amidst the chaos. Each hammered nail and patched roof was an act of defiance, a statement that she would not be pushed out. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Emily received a call from a local attorney recommended by Helen. The lawyer, Thomas Reed, was known for taking on cases against powerful landowners. His voice was calm but urgent as he warned her of the risks ahead and offered legal counsel to protect her interests. With Thomas's help, Emily began compiling evidence from Margaret's letters, the map, and the documents she had uncovered. The pieces formed a disturbing mosaic of forged signatures, bribery, and intimidation. Proof that Clayton Monroe and his associates had orchestrated a campaign to seize properties illegally. But with the legal battle looming, so did the threats. Anonymous calls in the dead of night, warnings to abandon the house, and veiled threats at the hardware store heightened the stakes. Emily's world narrowed to a fragile bubble of determination and fear, a tightrope walk between hope and danger. Yet, amid the turmoil, unexpected allies emerged. Neighbors who had once watched from a distance began to speak out, sharing their own stories of loss and injustice. The community, long silenced by Monroe's influence, found courage in Emily's fight. Small gatherings formed, people offering support in quiet but meaningful ways, meals left on the porch, offers to help with repairs, voices joining in calls for accountability. Emily found solace in these connections, the threads of solidarity weaving a safety net beneath her. She realized the battle was not hers alone. It was a collective stand against oppression and greed. The house was becoming a symbol, a rallying point for those who had been pushed aside. One evening, as rain hammered the roof and thunder rumbled overhead, Emily sat at the kitchen table, the diary and letters spread before her. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within, but inside, a quiet determination settled. She traced Margaret's words with her fingertips, feeling the weight of history and the urgency of the present entwined. The fight ahead would be perilous, but Emily was ready. For her baby, for Margaret, and for the community that dared to hope, she would face the threats, uncover the truth, and protect the home that was more than just a house. It was a testament to resilience and courage. The night deepened, but within the burned walls, a flicker of light endured, unwavering against the darkness pressing in from all sides. The day Emily Carter found the hidden documents was one she would never forget. It began like any other, with the sun casting a pale light over the burned shell of the house she was determined to restore. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of smoke, remnants of the fire that had nearly destroyed everything she hoped to save. But beneath the layers of ash and debris, Emily's hands trembled as she uncovered a small, rusted metal box wedged beneath a loose floorboard she had pried up earlier. The box was heavy and locked, but the lock was old and brittle. With a borrowed screwdriver and a steady hand, Emily managed to pry it open. Inside, carefully folded and tied with a faded ribbon, were documents that looked decades old, but were remarkably preserved. As she unfolded the papers, her eyes widened. These were legal documents, contracts, deeds, and letters that detailed a web of deceit and corruption aimed at seizing Margaret Harper's property. Among the papers, Emily found forged signatures, bribes paid to local officials, and correspondence between Clayton Monroe's agents, plotting to intimidate and displace homeowners. The evidence was damning, a smoking gun that could expose the developer's illegal tactics. Her heart pounded as she realized the significance. Not only could this save the house, but it could also protect others from falling victim to the same greed. Determined to confront the threat head-on, Emily arranged a meeting with Thomas Reed, the local attorney who had offered to help her navigate the legal maze. In his cluttered office, filled with stacks of case files and law books, they spread the documents across the table. Thomas's eyes scanned the papers, his expression shifting from skepticism to grim determination. "This is substantial evidence," he said quietly. "If we present this correctly, it could halt Monroe's operations and reclaim the property for rightful owners. But be prepared. This will not be an easy fight. Monroe has resources, influence, and no hesitation to use intimidation. Emily nodded, steeling herself for the battle ahead. The stakes were higher than ever. But she was no longer just a desperate woman trying to save a burned-out house. She was an advocate for justice, armed with truth. The confrontation came sooner than she expected. One afternoon, as Emily was working on repairing a window frame, a sharply dressed man appeared at the edge of the property. His presence was commanding, his eyes cold and calculating. Introducing himself as Monroe's legal representative, he carried a thick envelope and a thin smile. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Clayton Monroe," the man said smoothly. "We're prepared to negotiate a sale of the property. It would be in your best interest to accept. Resistance will only lead to complications." Emily's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "This house belongs to me now, and I have evidence that will prove Monroe's attempts to seize it were illegal. I'm not interested in selling." The man's smile faltered, replaced by a thin veneer of menace. "Think carefully, Miss Carter. People who dig too deep often find themselves in trouble. Selling is the simplest way forward." As he turned to leave, Emily caught a glimpse of his phone, the screen showing a message. "She's digging too much. Apply pressure." The threat was clear, but Emily refused to back down. That evening, she confided in Jack, her trusted friend and protector. His jaw clenched as she recounted the encounter, and he promised to keep a watchful eye. Together, they fortified the house as best they could, boarding up vulnerable windows, installing makeshift locks, and setting up simple alarms. Emily's exhaustion deepened, but the fight fueled her determination. Legal proceedings soon followed. Thomas filed formal complaints citing forged documents and coercion. The local authorities launched an investigation, their scrutiny shining a light on Monroe's shadowy dealings. The community rallied, neighbors coming forward with their own stories of intimidation and loss. Despite the mounting pressure, Monroe's camp escalated their tactics. Anonymous threats, attempts to discredit Emily, and even vandalism targeted the property. Yet, each attack only strengthened Emily's resolve. She understood that exposing the truth meant risking everything. But the promise of justice and a safe home for her child outweighed the fear. One rainy afternoon, a hearing was scheduled. The small courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Emily, flanked by Thomas and Jack, prepared to present the evidence. Margaret Harper's diary, the hidden documents, and eyewitness testimonies formed the backbone of their case. Emily spoke with quiet conviction, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. She recounted the history of the house, the fire that had destroyed it, and the relentless fight to reclaim it. The judge listened intently, the room silent except for the rustle of papers and occasional coughs. After hours of testimony, the judge adjourned to deliberate. The waiting was agonizing, but Emily found comfort in the support surrounding her. Neighbors offering reassuring smiles, Jack's steady presence, and Thomas's quiet confidence. When the verdict came, it was a victory, not just for Emily, but for the entire community. The court ruled in her favor, invalidating Monroe's fraudulent claims and halting his development plans. The property was legally recognized as hers, a rightful home reclaimed from the shadows of corruption. Relief washed over Emily in waves, mingling with exhaustion and disbelief. The fight had been arduous, but the truth had prevailed. She knew the road ahead would still hold challenges, restoring the house, rebuilding a life. But the foundation was secure. That night, as rain pattered softly against the motel window, Emily allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. She imagined the future, a home filled with love, laughter, and safety for her baby. The burned house, once a symbol of loss and despair, was now a beacon of hope and justice. With the fight behind her, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to rebuild, not just the house, but a life forged through resilience, courage, and unwavering determination. News of Emily Carter's legal victory spread through the small town like a fresh breeze, stirring long dormant hopes and quiet whispers of change. The courtroom's ruling had not only halted Clayton Monroe's aggressive land grabs, but also exposed the tangled web of corruption that had suffocated the community for years. Emily's fight became a rallying point, drawing neighbors and townspeople out of silence and into solidarity. The morning after the verdict, Emily found herself surrounded by familiar faces at the modest hardware store where she had first struggled to purchase supplies. Mrs. Whitaker from the library brought homemade cookies, while Helen arrived with a basket of fresh vegetables from her garden. Even those who had once doubted her now offered words of encouragement and promises of help with repairs. A local journalist, Mark Thompson, arrived that day, his camera and notepad in tow. He had been following Emily's story since the discovery of Margaret Harper's diary, and now with the court's decision, he was eager to share the full narrative with the wider world. Over coffee at the town's small cafe, Emily recounted the journey, the burned house, the hidden basement, the threats, and the legal battle. Mark listened intently, capturing not just facts, but the emotions that fueled her determination. His articles would soon appear in local newspapers and online platforms, shining a spotlight on the injustices faced by smaller communities against powerful developers. Emily's story became a symbol of resistance and hope, inspiring others facing similar struggles. With newfound public attention, community fundraising efforts sprang to life. Neighbors organized bake sales, car washes, and small concerts to raise money for the house's restoration. Donations of materials and labor poured in, transforming the once isolated project into a collective endeavor. The town's spirit, long dampened by fear and loss, rekindled through shared purpose. Emily, though still navigating the physical demands of late pregnancy, threw herself into coordinating the renovations. Jack, ever supportive, took the lead on structural repairs, his mechanical expertise invaluable in stabilizing the foundation and patching the roof. Volunteers worked alongside them, painting walls, clearing debris, and planting flowers in the yard. Each day brought progress visible to all. A crack in the foundation sealed, a window replaced, a porch rebuilt. The burned house, once a symbol of despair, began to transform into a home worthy of the stories it held. Emily's heart swelled, watching the community's hands shape the walls that would shelter her family. Alongside the physical work, Emily and Thomas Reed prepared for the ongoing legal processes to ensure the property's protection and to hold Monroe accountable for his actions. The investigation expanded, aided by testimonies from residents emboldened by Emily's victory. The authorities began to crack down on corrupt practices, signaling a shift in the town's power dynamics. Despite the momentum, Emily remained cautious. The fight was far from over, and the scars left by years of intimidation ran deep. There were moments when the exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, when the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. But the support surrounding her, friends, neighbors, and newfound allies, provided strength she could lean on. One afternoon, as the sun warmed the freshly painted porch, Emily sat with Helen and Jack, sipping lemonade and sharing stories. Helen smiled warmly, recalling how the neighborhood had once been divided and fearful. "You've brought us together," she said softly, "not just to save a house, but to reclaim our community." Emily nodded, feeling the truth of those words. The house was more than shelter. It was a symbol of resilience, unity, and the power of standing up against injustice. The journey had revealed the strength hidden within ordinary people, the courage to fight and to hope. As the weeks passed, preparations for the baby's arrival intensified. The nursery was painted in soft hues, a crib assembled in a corner bathed in gentle afternoon light. Emily found solace in these moments of normalcy amidst the chaos. A lullaby hummed softly, a blanket folded carefully, a promise of new beginnings. The community's involvement extended beyond bricks and mortar. A local midwife offered prenatal care and support, neighbors volunteered to help with errands and meals, and the town's small church organized a blessing ceremony to celebrate the impending birth and the home's restoration. Emily's relationship with Jack deepened, their bond forged through shared struggles and quiet moments of tenderness. His steady presence was a balm to her fears, a reminder that, despite the battles fought, love and hope endured. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and gold, Emily stood on the porch of the house she had fought so hard to claim. The soft murmur of the community gathered nearby, laughter and conversation weaving through the air. She cradled her growing belly, feeling the life within. A new chapter intertwined with the legacy of Margaret Harper and the collective strength of those who refused to be silenced. The road ahead remained uncertain, but for now, surrounded by friends and the promise of a safe home, Emily allowed herself to dream. The burned house was no longer just a ruin. It was a beacon of hope, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of a community rising from the ashes. The courtroom buzzed softly with anticipation on the morning of the final hearing. Emily Carter sat at the edge of the worn wooden bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap, the weight of months of struggle pressing heavily on her shoulders. Around her, neighbors and supporters filled the small room, their faces a mixture of hope and determination. This was more than a legal battle. It was a fight to secure a home, a future, and justice for a community long silenced. Thomas Reed sat beside her, papers and evidence carefully organized before him. The diary of Margaret Harper, the hidden documents, and the testimonies collected from neighbors formed the backbone of their case. Across the room, representatives for Clayton Monroe watched with thinly veiled impatience, their confident demeanor a stark contrast to the tension in the air. As the judge entered, the room fell into a respectful hush. The proceedings began with opening statements, Thomas speaking with measured conviction about the fraudulent means by which Monroe had sought to claim the land. Emily listened closely, her heart pounding as the reality of the moment settled in. When it was her turn to speak, Emily rose slowly, the collective gaze of the courtroom upon her. Her voice was steady, carrying a quiet strength that belied her exhaustion. She recounted her journey, from the day she discovered the burned house, to the hidden basement, to the diary that revealed a history of injustice. She spoke of Margaret Harper's fight, the threats she had endured, and the evidence she had uncovered of Monroe's illegal schemes. The judge's eyes remained fixed on her, absorbing every word. Emily's testimony was not just about legal rights. It was a plea for recognition of the human cost behind the documents, the lives disrupted by greed and corruption. Witnesses called to the stand added their voices to the chorus of truth. Neighbors recounted their memories of Margaret, the mysterious circumstances of the fire, and the intimidation tactics used by Monroe's agents. The local journalist, Mark Thompson, presented his investigative findings, connecting the dots between past injustices and current efforts to hold the developer accountable. Monroe's legal team attempted to discredit the evidence, casting doubt on the authenticity of documents and the reliability of witnesses. But Thomas countered with methodical precision, highlighting inconsistencies in their claims and reinforcing the weight of the accumulated proof. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of arguments and rebuttals. Emily's exhaustion deepened, but her resolve remained unshaken. She found strength in the faces around her, the community she had come to belong to, united by a shared purpose. Finally, the judge retired to deliberate, leaving the courtroom in a charged silence. The wait was agonizing. Emily's thoughts swirled with memories of the journey, the sacrifices made, and the future hanging in the balance. When the judge returned, the room held its breath. The verdict was read slowly, deliberately. The court ruled in Emily's favor, recognizing her rightful ownership of the property and invalidating Monroe's fraudulent claims. The decision halted the developer's plans and ordered restitution for those affected by the illegal actions. Relief and joy surged through the courtroom. Neighbors embraced, tears streaming down faces that had borne the weight of fear and uncertainty for too long. Emily felt a profound sense of victory, not just for herself, but for a community reclaimed. In the days that followed, momentum built quickly. Grants and community fundraising efforts poured in, accelerating the restoration of the house. Skilled tradespeople volunteered their time, and neighbors offered tools, materials, and encouragement. The burned house, once a symbol of devastation, began to transform into a home filled with light and promise. Emily's pregnancy progressed amidst the flurry of activity. The nursery was prepared with care, painted walls, a crib assembled, and soft blankets folded neatly. The house, once cold and broken, now held the warmth of hope and new beginnings. Jack's steady presence was a constant comfort. Together, they navigated the challenges of renovation and the anticipation of parenthood. The community's support extended beyond bricks and mortar, weaving a network of care that embraced Emily and the child she would soon bring into the world. One evening, as the sun set over the quiet town, Emily stood on the porch of her restored home. The sky blazed with colors of amber and rose, a reflection of the journey from darkness to light. She cradled her belly, feeling the gentle movements of life within, and allowed herself a moment to breathe in the promise of the future. The house was no longer just a structure of wood and stone. It was a testament to resilience, justice, and the power of standing together. Emily's fight had secured more than a place to live. It had restored a community's faith and forged a legacy that would endure. As stars began to twinkle overhead, Emily whispered a silent thank you to Margaret Harper and all those who had come before. Their courage had paved the way, and now, with a home reclaimed and a life growing inside her, Emily was ready to build a future filled with love, hope, and unyielding strength. The morning light streamed gently through the curtains of the restored house, casting a warm glow over the soft pastel walls of the nursery. Emily Carter sat quietly in the rocking chair, her hands resting protectively on her rounded belly, feeling the steady, reassuring movements of the life growing inside her. The journey from that burned shell on the edge of town to this peaceful room, filled with the promise of new beginnings, had been arduous. Yet it had transformed more than just the house. It had transformed her. In the months since the court's ruling and the community's rallying support, Emily had grown into a woman fortified by resilience and hope. The scars from the struggle were still there, etched in the lines around her eyes, in the cautious optimism that softened her smile. But they were reminders of strength, not defeat. Her days settled into a rhythm balancing preparation for motherhood with the ongoing work of nurturing a home and a community that had become so dear. Jack was a constant presence, his quiet support a steady anchor in the whirlwind of change. Together, they had woven their lives together, their connection deepened by shared trials moments of tenderness. Outside, the neighborhood thrummed with renewed life. The burned house, once an emblem of loss, stood proudly among other restored homes. Its fresh paint and blooming garden, a testament to the collective effort that had made it possible. Emily often found herself walking the streets with a sense of belonging she had never known before, exchanging smiles and greetings with neighbors who had once been strangers. The community's transformation mirrored her own. Conversations about the past injustices had sparked initiatives to protect local homeowners from predatory developers and to preserve the town's history and character. Emily found herself at the heart of these efforts, her experience lending both voice and vision to the cause. One afternoon, as she helped organize a neighborhood meeting in the town hall, Emily felt the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on her shoulders. The room was filled with faces eager to contribute. Young families, longtime residents, and even some who had once doubted her resolve. Together, they discussed plans for a community trust to safeguard homes and provide legal support to those threatened by unfair practices. Emily's role was no longer just that of a survivor. She had become a leader, a symbol of empowerment born from adversity. The journey that had begun with the purchase of a fire-damaged house had blossomed into a movement that extended far beyond her own story. Amid these commitments, preparations for the baby's arrival continued with joyful anticipation. The nursery was completed with care. Soft blankets, handmade toys, and the gentle hum of a lullaby playing from a small music box. Emily found solace in these moments, the simple acts of nesting grounding her amidst the larger challenges. Jack often sat beside her, his hand resting on her belly, speaking softly to their unborn child. Their bond deepened with each passing day, a quiet partnership forged through hardship and hope. For Emily, this was more than love. It was a promise of stability and family. The night before her due date, Emily stood on the porch, gazing up at the stars scattered across the velvet sky. The house was silent save for the gentle rustle of leaves, a sanctuary shaped by determination and care. She thought of Margaret Harper, whose courage had paved the way, and of the community that had rallied around her. A sense of peace settled over Emily, mingling with the excitement and nerves that came with impending motherhood. The road ahead remained uncertain, but she felt ready, rooted in the strength of her journey, and surrounded by those who believed in her. In the quiet hours that followed, labor began softly, a rhythm both ancient and new. With Jack at her side and the support of the community close in spirit, Emily embraced the moment. The house, once a burned ruin, now held the promise of life and love, a cradle for a future shaped by resilience. As dawn broke, Emily held her newborn close, the baby's warm breath a gentle reminder of all that had been lost and all that had been found. The journey had been long, fraught with struggle and sacrifice. But in this tender moment, hope blossomed fully. The restored house echoed with the quiet sounds of new life, a beginning forged through courage, community, and unwavering faith in the promise of tomorrow. The soft morning light spilled through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the living room, where Emily Carter cradled her newborn daughter, Lily, in her arms. The house, once a blackened ruin, now stood transformed, its fresh paint gleaming in the sunlight, the garden bursting with wildflowers planted by neighbors who had become family. Around her, the gentle hum of friends and neighbors gathered for a celebration filled the air, their laughter and warmth weaving a tapestry of hope and belonging. Just months ago, Emily had been a woman on the brink, 8 months pregnant, overwhelmed by loss and uncertainty, standing before a burned-down house on the edge of town, with nothing but fragile hope. Now, surrounded by those who had stood beside her through every trial, she felt the weight of that journey settle into quiet gratitude. The gathering was more than a housewarming. It was a testament to resilience, community, and the power of standing up for what was right. Tables overflowed with homemade dishes, children played beneath strings of twinkling lights, and stories of struggle and triumph were shared in voices both joyous and reflective. Emily's eyes met Jack's across the crowd, his smile steady and full of pride. He approached, bending down to kiss Lily's forehead, and together they watched as neighbors mingled, their faces alight with the promise of new beginnings. Near the garden gate, Helen and Mrs. Whitaker spoke softly, their conversation touched by memories of Margaret Harper and the battles fought to reclaim the home that now sheltered Emily's family. The legacy of courage had blossomed into something tangible, a community united not just by place, but by shared purpose. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues over the gathering, Emily stood and addressed the crowd. Her voice carried the strength forged through months of hardship and hope. "Thank you all," she began, eyes shining with emotion. "This house is more than walls and a roof. It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we come together. It's a home for my family, yes, but it's also a beacon for this community. We've faced injustice and fear, but we've chosen to rise above it. Together, we will protect our homes, our stories, and our futures." Applause rose like a wave, echoing into the twilight. Conversations turned toward plans for neighborhood initiatives to safeguard against future threats, legal workshops, support networks, and community watch groups. The fire that once threatened to consume their lives had sparked a blaze of activism and solidarity. Later, as the stars twinkled overhead and the crowd slowly dispersed, Emily stood on the porch with Lily nestled against her chest. The night air was cool and filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. She breathed deeply, savoring the peace that had seemed so elusive before. Her thoughts drifted back to the diary she had found in the basement, the words of Margaret Harper, a woman whose quiet bravery had illuminated a path through darkness. Emily whispered a silent thank you, knowing that it was Margaret's spirit that had guided her, that had connected past and present in this house of hope. With Jack's hand resting gently on her shoulder, Emily looked out over the neighborhood where children's laughter still echoed faintly. This was home, hard-won and cherished. The journey had been long and fraught, but in this moment, surrounded by love and community, Emily felt the full weight of possibility. The burned house had been restored not just as a dwelling, but as a testament to resilience, courage, and the enduring power of hope. It stood proudly, a beacon for all who had faced hardship and chosen to fight back, a sanctuary where new stories would be written. Cradling Lily close, Emily smiled, ready to embrace the future. A future built on the strength of those who dared to stand up for what was right, and the love that had carried them through.